All right, guys, so now we are moving on to number 5 in the cheat sheet. And again, as I always say in every video, reference the other videos on each of these other items at your discretion. If you feel if you feel like you need to, it's probably linked somewhere in this video or on this page, or depending on where you're seeing this in the description. So let's jump right in. This one's always a fun one. The use of negative keywords in search terms. So these two are very related. Especially if you find you're using a lot of broad match keywords, it typically means you're going to have a lot of problems with search terms and negative keywords. It doesn't always mean that, but I'll show you an example in a few minutes here of where that's actually happening to get an idea of what I'm talking about. But the big idea here is that there are going to be keywords or things that are pretty obvious that you don't want to show an ad for. They're not relevant to what you do. They're not, or they might be relevant, but you just don't want to show an ad for them, and you want to get rid of them. And so that's going to happen by adding negative keywords to them. And you're going to know that they're happening by reviewing your search terms report, which is different than a keyword. A keyword that you add to your account might be, Hawaii snorkel tour, right? But a search term, this is what somebody actually types into Google, might be cheapest snorkel tour in Hawaii, right? And you might say, well, I don't want to be I'm not the cheapest. I definitely don't want to advertise that way. That would be a good example for a negative keyword. So we're going to look at both of these together. I probably should have made this first and this third check option together because they're kind of more closely related, but I'll just take them in the order they come. So what we want to do first is think about and review our search terms for any obvious negatives. Well, I guess we could just say we want to add them. So what does that mean? That means things like, if you know for certain you don't do a sunset sail, like a sunset cruise, sunset sail, tour or whatever you want to call it. Maybe it won't be a tour, but it'll be a package for people, right? You don't do those, but you do sailing tours and packages, but not sunset. Then you probably want to think about, okay, well, I know people look for both. Let me just make a note and make sure we add some kind of a negative keyword around the word sunset. And so what I would recommend you doing is getting it could be an Excel sheet. I'm just using a simple text doc. And you want to put down either phrase match or exact match negatives, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But let's just look at it like this. If you know for certain that there's no tour and no reason you ever want to show up for a sunset related any word, I would recommend you use the word sunset as a phrase match, which would be in these quotations, okay? If it's something where, well, I do offer sunset this other tour, but just not for this individual tour, we could still use it as a phrase match at the right place, but I think you might want to consider maybe making it an exact match negative for that context. Like maybe it could be a sunset sailing, right? We'll just leave it like that. Oh, sorry. Sunset sailing tour. Tour is probably not the best word. And then we might also, since we're using exact match or phrase match, they don't account for plurals. So you'd have to type in sunset sailing tours, like so. So it can be a little annoying, to be honest with you. We like to use phrase match whenever possible, so we don't have to worry about all these iterations, because maybe somebody misspelled something, maybe it's sunset boat tour or whatever, right? That'd be another one we have to add here. So having just the word sunset is my preferred method if we're not going to ever really want to show for it, or we can control where that keyword shows up. And so it's good to, again, think about the obvious things. For sale, if you do pontoon boat rentals or whatever, sometimes if you're using broad match, Google might think you also sell boats. So things like for sale might be an idea. But just think of, other locations. Maybe somebody's in your location, but they're searching for another location. So maybe you have a keyword for jet ski rental, and that's your keyword, and you don't put your city name in it. But somebody's Googling jet ski rental for a different city you have nothing to do with, right? So that would be an example of maybe another location you might want to add a negative keyword. And it could be maybe right down the street from you, but you know that those people don't typically convert well. So those would be another examples of where we might want to add a phrase match negative for that. And this is just a good practice to kind of think about the confusion that customers might have or locations that you can think of off the top of your head without having to look at any data yet, and add those into a sheet like this, okay? So now what we want to do is look at the actual search terms themselves. And basically these two steps, or these two items here, are going to somewhat overlap. We're going to look for things that have bad performance, and also things that are just not, and also how to add them in the phrase and exact match iteration that they should be in based on actual data. So what we're going to do is pop into our AdWords account, and we're going to be at the all campaigns starting point again. We're going to click on keywords again. And first thing we want to do is look at, because depending on your date range, we're looking at all-time data here. And this is like almost 10 years worth of data, and it hasn't ran for most of those years, but you get the idea. Let me just go ahead and remove these filters from our last video. Okay, I'm looking at search keywords, but I may want to start with negative keywords and just get an idea of what is already in my account. What you'll typically find is some people have no negative keywords at all. They have very few negative keywords. They have negative keywords that should be in a phrase match that are an exact match, like we just talked about, and they're missing all the plurals, they're missing all the other iterations of them. And then a lot of times people will add negative keywords just at an ad group level or a campaign level, because that's how Google makes it easy. We like to use negative keyword lists whenever possible. And you can apply a whole list of keywords to whatever campaign you want. It just makes it faster, so I can update it in one place in a list, and it will apply to all the campaigns that I have associated with that list, instead of having to manually go and add them to each one if they should be negatives across all these different campaigns. We also add things for like competitor negatives, and we'll add those separately, because sometimes we might want to go after competitors who are really aggressive, and we could just remove the list from that campaign, and we don't have to go in and like delete a bunch of stuff. So it's just easier that way. But at very least, I would recommend having what we call like a general negatives keyword list, which is negative keywords that can apply to any campaign in your entire account, because you know for sure you're never going to want to run ads like for sale, like a location that you know you're not going to ever be relevant for. You can add those here, and the place you would do that is by clicking on the tools section up here. Look for the shared library, under the shared library, and you look for a negative keyword list, and you can just click on that and add a new list. You can name it whatever you want. I call it general negatives typically. And this is where, when you're done with this part of your research, you're probably going to add a lot of those keywords into this new list. So this part you can do at the end, but we do recommend using negative keyword lists whenever possible. It's just more tidy, more organized, and you can see I've applied to 11 campaigns, 12 campaigns. I got to remove those campaigns whenever I want. I can apply it to a new campaign if I want. So it's a lot easier than having to copy and paste and remember, did I add it to that campaign? Did I add that keyword to this campaign? I don't remember. So you're never going to remember. Just trust me, use negative keyword lists. So just go back to where we were and take a look. So as we've noticed our list, maybe individual keywords that were added as negatives, which we don't have because we did this the right way. You want to go to search terms. These are, again, the things we're actually typing in to see your ad. And so what I'm going to draw your attention to is it's probably better to sort by impressions or by cost, something like that, or it might say interactions, which are clicks. That's fine too. But just look for like the worst offenders, because if you've got thousands and thousands of these, it might take you a while to get through everything. So it's kind of better off to start with the things that are actually a problem. And what we want to do, there's a couple of different ways you can do this, but I would just start eyeballing. I would eyeball the first 1,000 of them, because as you go through, you're going to find things that are relevant right off the bat. You see right here, here's one. This is item number 4, based on clicks, which was an issue due to the fact that we had a broad match keyword in here. Well, we didn't add it, but it was what was here before, and it's basically just the location. And so people who are Googling location, it's doubtful that they're looking for our tour or our rental at that exact moment. And so you can see we had 890 clicks there, and our conversion rate was 0.22%, where the average was 4.42, right? So that's pretty darn low. And some of the ways you can find these bad terms or bad keywords is by performance. I would recommend looking at maybe your cost per lead. You could sort by cost per conversion. If you're tracking correctly, you can sort by conversion rate. Again, I told you sort by impressions or costs or clicks, because all of you will have that data. If you're not tracking conversions, then telling you to look by conversions is not going to be super helpful. But we're just looking for ideas like this. I would copy this keyword, and I know for sure we don't want to get rid of this keyword in a phrase match, because that's a lot of our keywords have a location in it. We don't want to do that. So we probably just want to copy this, and this would be a good example of an exact match negative. So just this exact keyword, we don't want to do that. We might even say, just to be, depending on how big of an offender this was, this is our number 4 search term by clicks. It means it's a pretty popular term. We might want to add some iterations like FL. Maybe we want to say Florida, right? The way people might have typed this in. And then consider those all to be exact negatives too that we want to add later on. So that's one way to find them. And we can just go through this list and look for anything else. Here goes Crab Island again, but it's showing up in a separate match type because it looks like it was added here as a keyword, which is still not a good idea either. And you might just find other things like that that are just not relevant for what you do. And so again, making sure you're putting them right match type. If we would have just put Crab Island here, then we would have a serious problem, because if we're looking to get pontoon rentals in Crab Island and we have this negative, whenever somebody does a search for pontoon rental Crab Island, our ad will never show. We'll be like, what happened to all of our bookings? What happened to all of our traffic? Where did it go? It's because you added the wrong match type. So there's some, I can put a link to the Google explanation of match types. I don't want to get into all those details. This video is already 11 minutes long, but it's really important to err on the side of caution here. And if you're not sure, you can reach out to us or somebody like that you trust. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and look at all your keywords for you. For everybody that sees this video, that would be kind of crazy, because there's a lot of context that goes into this, right? Knowing a location that's bad, I don't know what that's going to be. But, you know, maybe you've got a specific example that you want to ask about, and that's perfectly fine. But just saying, hey, look at my keywords, I'm not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. So, sorry. But yeah, that's basically something you want to keep in mind. Look at the Google Docs, they'll give you examples. If you added, you know, a negative for a red, and your keyword's red shoes, and it was a phrase match negative, it's not going to show when people search that way. If it was an exact, it would, and all that. It'll give you the whole kind of scenario, and I've pretty much summed it up here, but it's good to see it right from Google in a very visual way. Going back to what we would do with this, so once we get through some of these keywords, we might just say, all right, well, let's add, you know, this list to our negative keywords list here, apply it to this campaign, and we'll find that a lot of the wasted ad spend that we have, like for example, this whole Crab Island keyword. Here's another example, Crab Island Destin. All right, that's the location. That's great. But here, you know, we spent, there's no cost here, but we got $240, 250 clicks, sorry. The average cost per click is a couple dollars here. And then we got, here's another iteration, another 276 clicks. The average cost is $2. Let's just say it's, you know, here's $500. Here's another $550. Here's another $640. That's $1,000 just right here in this view that we potentially will save because we're not getting crappy keywords. So you can see how impactful this can be, especially if you're using the average broad match approach that most tour operators are forced to take because they don't know any better. So that's what I got for you here. If you need more help, this is one of those things that's not super like specific to any one client, to all clients. It's really kind of on a case-by-case basis, so it does require a little bit more explanation, a little more finesse. So feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions if I didn't do it justice, and I'll try to help out in a reasonable way and point you to some good documentation on this from Google Ads, okay? Thanks so much for watching, and talk to you in the next video, or see you in the next video. Thanks.